exactly would I consider this album? What's up, my fellow headbangers? I'm Courtney, aka the Versatile Virgo, and welcome to my YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know me, I run a metal lifestyle website, theversatilevirgo.com, where I focus on the best things in life: music, food, and sometimes fashion. I also have an Etsy shop where I sell t-shirts, tank tops, and tote bags made from official band tees. So if that's something that interests you, I've linked both my website and my Etsy shop in the description below. Oceans of Slumber have just released their newest album, Starlight and Ash, and it's something I have been looking forward to since the band first announced they were even working on a new album. Oceans of Slumber has been saying for a while prior to the release of Starlight and Ash that this album is not necessarily going to be considered metal. It's actually kind of funny to me because as I've been a fan of Oceans of Slumber over the years, I've noticed that the way outlets and even Spotify describes what genre they fit into has changed. I've seen them described as doom metal, they've been called progressive metal, they're also considered to be gothic metal, but I feel Oceans of Slumber is so much more than that. And as you know, if you've been watching my videos, we love bands that push the envelope and don't necessarily try to fit into a box. So what exactly would I consider this album? Well, I'm about to break it all down for you. The album opens with The Waters Rising, which I did a review of here on YouTube when this song was dropped as a single. I'll link that in the description so you can check it out. As soon as the album opens with The Waters Rising, the mood is instantly set, and you're pulled into the Oceans of Slumber experience, which is something that I feel the band has always consistently done. When I hit play on this album, even though I was streaming it, I actually kind of felt like I had just put on a vinyl. Like, it felt to me as though I just really sat down and was being involved in something rather than just putting on another album and streaming it. The Waters Rising evokes this powerful emotion, which is driven home even further by these stellar vocals of Miss Cammie Beverly, who, can I just say, is one of my favorite vocalists, period. Hearts of Stone is next, which is even darker and moodier than the prior track. There's a lot of different things going on with this song. It has some moments that remind me of goth metal, but it also very much gives off this bluesy feel, even though it's not necessarily a blues track either. It's kind of hard rock too. Call it whatever you want, but it is entirely Oceans of Slumber. Then there's the Lighthouse, which gives us another layer of this band. This song has a very heavy Southern influence, and Oceans of Slumber is from Texas, so it's not something I was really surprised by. I actually very much welcomed it on this album. The Lighthouse also has, again, a very heavy bluesy feel to it. And we may only be 3 tracks in, but I'm just gonna let you know now that that blues vibe is something that's very present on the whole album. But the next song, Forest Rhodes, is definitely a ballad. And it's filled with this sort of beautiful emotion that kind of just leaves you like, damn. Something consistent with Oceans of Slumber across the board. But I would definitely consider Forest Rhodes to be one of their more emotional tracks, at least in recent years. The Hanging Tree continues this, but it bounces back and forth between that and those moodier elements that we were talking about earlier. Yet somehow this song sort of carries this peacefulness to it, if you will. Yet you could still feel all those emotions are just kind of brimming underneath the surface. And it makes for a really cool song. Again, this band's ability to kind of portray human emotion in their music is just, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like the #1 thing I think of when I think of Oceans of Slumber. Salvation follows that, which falls even more into those darker and moodier sounds. We've been talking a lot about the blues feel to this album, but this song in particular feels like it just transports you into a dark, smoky, bluesy club. It is a standout track on the album for me. And then the song builds into this climax where it's just like, this this is heavy music. Another one of my favorites follows that, which is called Starlight. Of all the tracks we've heard so far, this is the song that I would say probably has the most metal elements to it, and this is where the album starts to have more of those metal elements to it as the tracks go on. Starlight is very drum driven, especially when the track starts. Oh, and by the way, when I say metal elements, I'm definitely more so referring to the sounds of bands like Chemist, for example, especially the most recent Chemist album that dropped in 2021 called Deceiver. So think doom, prog, alt metal. Speaking of which, really quickly, you guys know I am all about supporting live music. I mean, remember when we went so long without live music in 2020 and the world lost it, and now the world is more nuts than ever? Do you really think that we can go without live music again? I don't. So support live music for the good of the world. Anyways, I just want to mention that both Chemist and Oceans of Slumber are going to be touring soon. I don't think either of them have hit the road just yet, and they're not hitting the road on the same tour, but if you're interested in seeing them, I would definitely get out and do so. So check their respective social media accounts, websites, etc. for details on that. I really want to see both bands terribly, but especially Oceans of Slumber. The date that they're coming to town actually conflicts when I have concert tickets for a show that's out of town. So I'm trying to work out exactly how I'm going to see Oceans of Slumber, but I'm gonna figure it out. I'm pretty determined. Because I just think it's going to be a one-of-a-kind experience, especially listening to this album. I'm so just intrigued by what their live show is going to be like. So anyways, back to the album Starlight and Ash. The Spring of 21 is next, which is a piano interlude. It's not something I necessarily expected to hear on this album, but at the same time, being an Oceans of Slumber fan and knowing how they're all about the music and kind of the art, I'm also not surprised to hear it on this album, if that makes sense. I think that this band is just focused on putting out quality music and putting out a quality musical experience that effectively conveys their art. And the Spring of 21 is definitely that. I also see why, though, Oceans of Slumber really stressed that this album was not going to be a, quote, metal album, because it's definitely not. And I could see for the casual metal fan that's heard of Oceans of Slumber, but that has never really listened to them, I could see those being the fans that go out and trash this album. But for us Oceans of Slumber fans, and those of us that genuinely just kind of appreciate all aspects of music and what it does for us mere mortals, we're just giving a standing ovation at the end of this song. And Starlight and Ash is kind of set up almost like a beautiful ballet, especially because this is where the album leads into another piano-driven song called Just a Day. This song starts out literally with just Cammie's iconic angelic voice and the piano. And it's like that for almost the first 2 minutes, and then the rest of the elements come crushing in like an anvil just fell on top of you. It's that deeply heavy. And when that happens, there's definitely those metal elements present. Again, more doom and goth metal. And at one point, this song almost kind of gives me some Misfit vibes, just because it gets fast like punk, but it's still so dark and emotive. Something that might surprise the casual metal fan, but remember, you're not just a casual metal fan. You're a heavy music enthusiast, just like me. Or at least I assume so, because you've made it to this point in the video. And we heavy music connoisseurs love those hidden gems, right? Well, that leads me into the next track, which is the band's cover of House of the Rising Sun. So first of all, if you're new to Oceans of Slumber, you should know they are amazing when it comes to covers. Earlier this year, there was like talk of, wouldn't it be awesome if there was a Typo Negative covers album, and Cammie, the vocalist for Oceans of Slumber, was who people were resoundingly saying should be the vocalist if there was a Typo Negative covers album to come out. I 100% agree, by the way. Anyways, When it comes to how Oceans of Slumber covers a song, I just think they're so great at it because they always reinterpret it to their Oceans of Slumber style. It's always unique and it's always 100% them at the same time. And I call the Oceans of Slumber version of House of the Rising Sun a hidden gem because it was actually released as a single prior to this album dropping, but I don't think that it really got the attention that it deserves. This is a ballad version of House of the Rising Sun, and it is nothing short of iconic. The album closes with The Shipbuilder's Son, which takes us back to that moody, bluesy side of Oceans of Slumber. And it still has those metal elements we've been talking about, but this song is basically a blend of all the things we've heard encompassed in this album, including the piano-driven, stripped-back elements, and those vocals where there's this peacefulness, yet this really strong emotion just brimming underneath that. And then that emotion eventually explodes in the instrumentals and the vocals, building again to that Oceans of Slumber musical climax where it almost feels like you're being pulled into the heavens just to be dropped down to earth. That's actually kind of how I would describe this band's sound. It's almost kind of like a musical interpretation of a fallen angel's story, if that makes sense. And that's very present on Starlight and Ash. And again, I think that's because Oceans of Slumber really focused on the art for this album and not just trying to fit into that metal box. They seem to have genuinely fed their creative souls, if you will, with this album. And that's something I have so much respect for. It's literally why I love this music and why I love Oceans of Slumber to begin with. So overall, I think Starlight and Ash is a great album. As I said earlier, I've been looking forward to it since Oceans of Slumber first announced they were even going to be working on a new album, and it definitely delivered what I was hoping for from this band. While it might not be for the metal fan that only listens to things like thrash and death metal, if you're someone who really appreciates the art of music, no matter what you listen to, doesn't have to be metal, you could be a pop fan for all I care, you will definitely appreciate this album. I actually think that's the beauty of this album not necessarily being metal, because it really does have the ability to reach and resonate with so many different people, so many different fans of different genres, and people that just genuinely love music and the art of music. Again, this is entirely kind of what I expect from Oceans of Slumber. I love that they just kind of do their thing. I think it's what adds to the allure of the band as a whole. And I just love seeing what they're gonna do next and how they're continuing to grow and hone in on their craft. Again, something I have the utmost respect for. I'm a firm believer that heavy music doesn't just mean metal. To me, it's about how the music feels. So while Starlight and Ash isn't necessarily metal, Oceans of Slumber is also out here proving my point as to what makes heavy music truly heavy. I also think heavy music is defined by the authenticity of that heaviness. And that is, without a doubt, Oceans of Slumber and their new album, Starlight and Ash. So now that you've heard my first impression thoughts of the new Oceans of Slumber album, Starlight and Ash, I want to hear yours. Drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you're already an Oceans of Slumber fan, please drop a comment below with your favorite track so that people who are new to the band can also check out your recommendations, whether it's from this album or another. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel because I have even more heavy music related videos on the way. Have a great weekend and stay heavy.